of sin and darkness, whose love is mighty and so much stronger. The King of glory, the King above all kings, who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder, who leaves us breathless in awe and wonder. The King of glory, the King above all kings. Shines like the sun, and oh, love is brilliant. The King of glory, the King above all kings. Yeah. We'll go tell it on the mountain, over the hills and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born. And go tell it, 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 go tell it.
Hey, welcome to Prairie Lakes Church. Merry Christmas. I'm Cody, the digital pastor here, and we're that weird family that just wishes this season would be longer. We had our Christmas tree up October 30th, and yeah, we're weird, but just can't believe that next weekend is Christmas already. So Merry Christmas. So glad that we get to spend some time with you here today. And before anything else, whether you're hearing this for the 100th time or for the first time, we need you to hear that we're a no matter church. What that means is no matter who you are, where you've been, what you've done, or even what's been done to you, we need you to hear God loves you. He really does. You don't have to clean yourself up. You don't have to be perfect. God loves you, and we're really glad that you're here. And if you're new, or you just haven't taken that step to become known, so maybe it's your first time or third time, or maybe your 100th time, and you've been sitting in your living room and you haven't become known, I encourage you to do that here today, because what we know is connected people are growing people. When you take that step to become known, when you ask questions, when you get connected, God uses that in significant ways. So I encourage you to do that here today. And if you become known, if you fill out our welcome card, I'll send you an Amazon gift card, just as a thank you for taking that step. So all you need to do right now is to text PLC to 99581 and fill out the short form. It takes about 30 seconds. And the thing that we get to do around here is invite boldly. And next weekend is Christmas, and there's no better time to be invitational in our little Iowas than this week right here. All you need to do is send a text. Ask people to watch online with you. And we're going to have services at 3:30 and 8 o'clock p.m. on the 24th. We're going to have a rebroadcast of our Christmas Eve services at 9 a.m. on Christmas Day, and it will be available on demand after that. So I encourage you to invite those in your little Iowa here this week. And the next step that we talk about every single week is giving generously. So I just want to thank you for everyone who's given so generous to Prairie Lakes Church this year. If you want to give right now, you can do that online at prairielakes.org/give. You can select your campus from the dropdown. But we're about to today's message, so let's kick to Pastor Jesse.
Prairie Lakes Church, hey, I think it's been, like a month, maybe a little bit more, since I've had a chance to talk to you from this spot. I think it was like the week before Thanksgiving. So in light of that, here's what I want to say to you, because I haven't had a chance to say it to you yet. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. And it's a week away, by the way, which is nuts. So here's my guess. I'm guessing that you're probably all over the place. I've talked to folks who are already getting sad because they can see the finish line of the holiday season, and they just want it to be longer. And then I've talked with folks who, for a host of reasons, just probably can't wait for it to be over, just for life to settle back down, or kind of just get through the season. So, hey, we say this every single weekend, and we're going to say it again. No matter where you're at on the Christmas spectrum here, whether you're, Tiny Tim or Scrooge, no matter who you are, no matter where you've been, no matter where you're at right now, no matter what you've done, no matter what's been done to you, and this is very true every single day. It's especially true at Christmas time. God loves you. He really does. And whatever you're bringing into the room, okay? You can look for him here. All right. We are concluding a series we've been in for the last 4 weeks, and it's called Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. And so here's where we've been. Week 1, we talked about, hey, if we want to have a Merry Christmas, we got to wonder. Some of us had to almost relearn, how do we wonder? Week 2 is how to help, how to be a helping presence in people's lives. And then week 3 is just how to be a presence. Last weekend. And so if any of those kind of pique your interest and you missed, go back, prairielakechurch.org, and you can see all of those sermons on there. But this weekend we're going to conclude, and here's where we're going as we do. The topic for this weekend is this: how do we, if we're going to have a Merry Christmas, maybe even help others have a Merry Christmas, how do we share truth, or how do we share the truth? We think that's a pretty big part of the holidays. How do we share the truth about Jesus, the truth about what we believe, our faith? How do we do that with the people in our little Iowas, in our spheres of influence, especially those who maybe don't know him? Maybe those of us, those people in our lives that just haven't taken that step yet. So I want to say the same thing, but maybe rephrase it in the form of a question, because really what we're asking is this: how do I share my faith? How do I do that? And we're going to explore this question in a few different ways this weekend. But before we do, let's do this together. Let's do a little self-check, a little exercise in self-awareness. Because as you look at that question there on the screen, as you look at that, I just want to ask you, and just check yourself here. What does this question make me feel? What do I feel as I read it? Become present to that just for a second, okay? Can you name it even? Can you name what you're feeling or what you're thinking? My guess is this. My guess is you're probably feeling a mix of things, maybe more than one thing. So just might be a mix of something like this, right? You might be feeling a little bit of fear. You might be feeling hopeful. You might be feeling optimistic or unequipped or comfortable or confused. I mean, it could be a host of different things. What are you feeling right now, though? Okay, see if you can't grab one or two. Just kind of file that away as we go. Because however you're feeling about it, however we're feeling about it, there is one thing that those of us who stepped across that line of faith, here's one thing that we know to be true about this question. And that is this: if we have this faith, if we got it, if we stepped across that line of faith and we know Jesus and we've got a relationship with him and all of that, right? If we got that, here's what we know. We ought to share it. It's kind of part of it. It's a pretty familiar passage, I'm sure, and we've referred to it several times here through the fall and start of winter, but Matthew 28, okay, let's just remind it. If you got it, you got to share it. Here's what Jesus says. Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I've commanded you. And surely I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. So it's familiar. If you've been around at Prairie Lakes, it's a familiar passage, and it's often referred to as the Great Commission. Because that's exactly what it is. It's Jesus' commission. It's Jesus giving a mission to his then 11 disciples to go and make other disciples and to get outside and in all nations share their faith. That's the mission he gave them. He's saying, what I've done with you guys for the last 3 years, I want you to go do with others. Don't stay in this holy huddle. Or if we quoted our senior pastor, don't be a fat, dumb, happy Christian. Right? Oh man, the things that guy gets away with, right? But get out there, because he's not wrong. Get out there, share your faith. Tell people who don't know about me, tell them about me. Teach them what I taught you. This is what Jesus is saying. So it's a pretty clear picture, pretty clear mission. But let's just make sure we don't miss it. Let's fill out the picture here, because here's what we said. We said, if you got it, you got to share it. All right. And so now here's what we have to add to that. It's a decision, yes, but it's also not really an option if you're following Jesus. I know that doesn't make logical sense, because how can something be a decision if it's not really an option, you know? So I hope you get what I'm saying there. I mean, it's a decision, meaning like it does require you to engage your will and decide to do it, right? In other words, it doesn't just happen automatically, right? But if you're a follower of Jesus, it's not really an option that you either do or don't do. Being a follower of Jesus means sharing your faith. One thing means the other. But we could summarize it in this way. We're not following Jesus if we're not sharing our faith, right? I mean, those are Jesus's words, is how he's defining it. Okay, so now how are you feeling? Like guilty, shame, frustrated, you know? Because it's simple, you know. It's simple. Jesus said it. I believe it. You know, let's go do it, right? What else do we have to say about it? It's not that simple, is it? Right? It's just not. It just isn't. I mean, I think that Jesus's words are clear. I don't think he's being unclear. But I also would say, I don't think it's a simple thing that he's telling us to do either. I don't think it is. I mean, I don't think that sharing your faith is always simple or even easy. And I've actually got some data that I want to share with you to back that up. I know I've shared some data from this organization before, but Barna Research did a project back in 2019, so just 3 years ago. And they called this project, it's a massive survey, but they were trying to figure out, they called it reviving evangelism. They're trying to get a sense of how does everybody, inside the church, outside the church, how do we think about this idea of sharing your faith? So if that word evangelism is either unfamiliar to you or if it's got weird baggage to it, here's what it basically means. It's the practice of sharing your faith, or more literally, it's proclaiming the good news about Jesus. That's what evangelism means. And there's some just crazy stats that I think it'll interest you, because they do capture how some of us feel about this idea of sharing our faith. So buckle up, okay? Here's the first one. Nearly half of millennial practicing Christians, so half of this group of millennial-aged practicing Christians, half of them say that it's wrong? Oh, okay. So just a couple of terms we need to define there. Millennials. What are millennials? Millennials are people in this study anyways that are born from 1984 to 98. So if you're born in this period of time between those 2 years, you're a millennial according to the survey. 24 to 38 years old. That's a millennial. Practicing Christians, here's how they define that. Practicing Christians are people who identify as Christian. They say that faith is very important in their lives, and they've attended church at least once in the last month. Now, you might say, that bar is really low. You're probably right, but that's who we're talking about, okay? So nearly half of that crew said that they think evangelizing is wrong. Which means what? Which means like half the people in the room that you're in who fits that category have disagreed with most of what I've said to this point. to a degree, right? I think it's just important to recognize. But the question is why? Why do half of them think it's wrong? Well, the study doesn't say exactly, but I would say this. I think there's an increasing desire, even on the part of Christians who believe and are following Jesus, to not force our beliefs on other people. Or to be respectful of other religions, or to not be a jerk in the name of Jesus, right? And just, again, so we're clear, when we're talking about millennials, 24 to 38, we're not just talking about kids, right? I mean, these are people that are approaching middle-aged. If you hear the term millennial and you go like, oh, those kids, it's kind of awkward because it kind of reveals where you're at on the spectrum. But a lot of millennial practicing Christians, for a lot of them, the idea of evangelizing, they're kind of categorizing it, I think, almost as unloving. Almost like that. Now, you may want me to set the record straight, right now. And we'll get our minds wrapped around that, but just keep going with me, just for a little bit. Here's another stat, and it's going to, I think, explain a little bit what's going on with that first one. 65% of the same group of people that said, half of them said evangelism, 65% believe that being a witness about Jesus is a part of their faith. So that does, but then that, I don't know, that doesn't make a lot of sense necessarily, but I think what it reveals is that a lot of us feel maybe conflicted about this. Because I want my friends to know about Jesus, yes, but I don't want to share my faith in a way with them that kind of turns them off either. And it seems like I've got more examples of people doing it bad than people doing it effectively. I don't really know how to resolve that. Yes, okay. Here's another stat. Just keep going. Almost 2 in 5 practicing Christians, so not just everybody, regardless of their age, 2 in 5, 40% almost, say that they've no non-Christian friends or family members, right? So holy huddle is a problem, okay? And not only that, here's the next one, more than half of practicing Christians report having 2 or fewer conversations about faith with a non-Christian during the past year. I mean, some of us are not only stuck in holy huddles, most of us aren't sharing our faith very much at all, right? Doesn't matter if you're millennial or not. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with it, most of us are not doing it, or not doing it very frequently. And you know what? If you're not depressed yet, let me just push you right over the edge, because there's some stats from the other side of the fence as well. We've been talking about what Christians think and believe and how they operate. Let's talk a little bit about how non-Christians or people outside the church, how do they think about some of this stuff? So here's the first one. 7 in 10 say that they are not on a quest for spiritual truth. Just all these people that Jesus is saying, go reach, all these nations, all these disciples, all of our little Iowa, 7 out of 10%, or 7 out of 10, 70%. Thanks. I mean, it's great. It's great for you. I'm glad it works for you, but no, I'm not interested. You know what I am interested in talking about? How bad the Broncos are this season. Lots of interest there. But when it comes to Jesus, when it comes to Jesus. By the way, let's just hit pause for a second, okay? How many of you are just so supremely irritated with Nathan Lawrence and the lies that he's feeding to Pastor John? Anybody else irritated? I am, okay? I'm working on that. But anyway, so let's get back to here. Most people are not like on this quest, okay? Most people are not, at least what the study says. And then here's the last one, okay? Here's the last one. 38% of people outside of the Christian faith, outside of the church, outside of a relationship, 38% say, I don't even have any questions about it. All right. I'm not on a quest, and I don't really have any questions. So there's the lay of the land, right? Let's just get this straight. Let's keep score here. Some of us think it's wrong to share our faith. Most of us aren't doing it. And most of the people we should be doing it with are not interested. That's what the data says to us. Reminds me, that lay of the land reminds me of one of my favorite scenes from the movie Lord of the Rings. Okay? This whole picture reminds me of that. And if you've seen it, maybe you remember it, but take a look at this.
Frodo has passed beyond my sight. The darkness is deepening.
If Sauron had the ring, we would know it.
It's only a matter of time. You suffered a defeat, yes, but behind the walls of Mordor, our enemy is regrouping.
Let him stay there. Let him rot! Why should we care?
Because 10,000 orcs now stand between Frodo and Mount Doom. I've sent him to his death.
No. There's still hope for Frodo. He needs time and safe passage across the plains of Gorgoroth. We can give him that.
How?
Draw out Sauron's armies. Empty his lands. Then we gather our full strength and march on the Black Gate.
We cannot achieve victory through strength of arms.
Not for ourselves. But we can give Frodo his chance if we keep Sauron's eye fixed upon us. Keep him blind to all else that moves. A diversion.
Certainty of death? Small chance of success. What are we waiting for?
Right? Like, small chance of success, you know? Like, I love Gimli. I love Gimli so much, okay? So if you're feeling like that, I mean, I get it. So here's, let's figure this thing out, because we're going to spend the rest of our time this weekend just talking about this and working our way into it. In light of all of this, regardless of where we're at in it, regardless of where the rest of the world's at in it, when it comes to sharing our faith, two things. Why would we still do it? Okay, why? And then how? Why and then how? Okay. So in his book, Start With Why, the author and consultant Simon Sinek, some of you have read this book. Here's what he says. He says, people don't buy what you do. They buy why you do it. And what you do simply proves what you believe. I think there's a verse about that. And it's true, right? So when it comes to sharing your faith, why? What's our why? We've actually already talked about our first why, and number one is because Jesus told us to do it. He told us to do it. That's at the top of the level, right? With Matthew 28, we looked at that. Let's though go a little bit deeper and deeper into our why. Because if Simon Sinek is onto anything, and I think he is, there's probably a deeper why that we need to connect with when it comes to sharing our faith. So next level is this, okay? Why would we share faith? Yes, Jesus told us to, but also this, because I haven't forgot what Jesus did for me. I think when we forget, and we do have a tendency, I have a tendency, you do, the longer we get in this, the easier it is to forget who we were and what life was like when Jesus found us. And when we don't forget, when that story is close to our hearts, we have a tendency to share faith. Take a look at this verse from Romans 5:8. Romans 5:8 says this, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." Let's just make sure we understand what's going on here. While we were still sinners, while we were still sinning, Jesus died. He died for that sin that stood between us and God. He took it upon himself. He took the separation that was due us. And he did that before we expressed openness. While we were one of the 7 out of 10, while we were one of the 38% who don't have any questions. He did it anyways. Before we expressed interest, before we felt conviction, before we asked for forgiveness, before we confessed, before we believed, before we stepped across that line of faith, before I repented, Jesus did this for me and for you. I think a lot of us, it's just so easy to forget because the further away that we get from that moment, that time in our life, that decision, just the easier it is to forget. The smaller that story can grow. Smaller and smaller in our hearts. This is why Jesus tells parables like the one about the 2 debtors in Luke 7. About the guy who was forgiven a huge debt that he could never repay, but then who goes around and demands payment from a debtor of his own for a very small debt. How easy it is to forget how much we've been forgiven. Or there's the one in Matthew 13 where, the guy he discovers a hidden treasure in a field and he mortgages everything he owns to buy that field because he knows that with that comes this treasure. Do we remember what an absolute treasure it is to be loved by God in Jesus? And do we remember who we were when that gift was offered to us? Okay. Let's go one level deeper. Why should we share our faith? Jesus said so, because I haven't forgot who I was when Jesus found me. Now finally, because God loved me first. Before I loved him, he loved me. I think in this conversation about sharing our faith, it's easy to think that, I should share my faith almost as like a favor I'm doing for God. That guy up there, he wants me to talk about him, and if it'll make him happy, I'm doing this thing for him in some kind of weird way. And I think we fall into that trap in a lot of areas when it comes to our relationship with him. I mean, religion has a way, this obligation, this transactional way of doing life with God. It just has a way of seeping in and displacing what really is a relationship, what really should feel natural, what really should kind of come out of us, flow out of us. We don't share our faith because we have to. We don't share our faith because God will be happier with us when we do. It's not like every time we share our faith, an angel gets its wings. It's not that. Angels don't have wings, by the way, just so you know. We do it because of love. We do it because of love. Because of God's love, because God first loved us. Let's just be reminded, 1 John 4, okay? This is love. For those of us who stepped across the faith line, this is love. Not that we loved God. Don't forget. Don't forget who you were, okay? This is love. Not that we love God, but that he loved us, and here's how. He sent his son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. That's one word in the Greek language, and it's a propitiation, which really means Jesus not only took all of the sin that stood between us and God, he took all of God's anger, he took all of God's wrath. Think about the things in relationship that when they happen, when someone does something to you that's wrong, that's hurtful, what does it do? It creates distance in your relationship, and what's filled into that gap in your relationship with them? If you're the ones being offended, sometimes it's hurt, sometimes it's anger, and all of it's justified, right? Because of what they did. What this is saying is Jesus took all of that stood between us and God. He took all of that away. He took it upon himself so that when God sees you and me, he does not see our sin. It does not define his relationship, his posture, his thoughts, his emotions, his view, his perspective, his impression of you and me. It's only love. So, dear friends, since God so loved us, since he loved us in that way, it's that kind of love. It's not obligatory love. It's this kind of love. Since God did this for us, we also ought to love one another. That's what should fuel our desire, our prayer, our strategy, our will, our emotions when it comes to sharing our faith. We love because he first loved us. That's the depth that we need to get down to when it comes to our why. Not that we love God. Love doesn't start with what we ought to do. This is love. This is love, what God has already done for us in Jesus, since God so loved us. Okay? All right. So start with why. Start with why. There's the why. As we finish now, let's tackle our second one. Let's talk about how. How. In that same Barna study that I referred to earlier, they also asked people outside of the faith this question, and this is going to serve as a guideline for us as we think about how. They asked people who don't know Jesus, okay? Don't go to church, don't believe, most of them aren't interested, a chunk of them aren't even asking questions. Those people, here's what they asked. What are the qualities of a good person to talk to about faith? Like if you were, what kind of person would you want to do that? And they just kind of gave them several options. And so what I want to do is I want to share with you what people on the outside are saying about how they would maybe like to engage. And so first slide, we're going to see 3 stats here. What are the qualities of a good person talked about faith? 62% of those respondents said, you know what, the number one quality is this. The person would have to listen without judgment. So when we're thinking about how do we do this, got to know. Listen. Right? Pastor John grabbed this one a while ago. It's really kind of held on. We brought it back up. Quick, slow, slow. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. But quick, listen first. Scripture kind of tells us, and also they're telling us, be a good listener. What's 34%? What's that mean? Here's what that means. They asked those people, do you know of a Christian who is like this? For the most part, no. Only a third knew someone, a Christian person, who listens without judgment. But 62% of them said, you know what? If I was looking for someone, that'd be the most important thing. Okay, so there's a gap, right? Number one. Number two, here's what they said. 50% of them says, does not force a conclusion. How many of you like to be on the other end of a sales call in which the person's trying to close you? Not me. And it's the same for a lot of these folks because these are really deep things we're talking about, right? Hard to see, hard to define. We're all in process, you know. Hey, don't try to tie all this up in a little bow, please. It's not where I'm at. It feels very disingenuous, okay? So don't try to force a conclusion. Hey, do you know of any Christians like that? No, not really. Only a quarter of them knew someone who was like that. So there's a real opportunity there. Number two. Number three. Hey, I talk to someone about faith if they allow me to draw my own conclusion. Ooh, that feels a little weird, right? I mean, what if someone says something like, well, you know what? I don't know. Jesus is fine, but I think all roads lead to heaven, you know? Well, actually, oh gosh. It's okay that people don't land where we land, okay? When I say that, I don't mean that it's okay, meaning I agree with it. or that I think it's true. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying in those conversations, you got to kind of prayerfully discern, okay, this person's not really landing, I think, where God ultimately wants them to land, but I got to tell myself that's okay because they're in process, God's at work. I'm just going to keep in step just to see, I'm not going to force stuff on them, right? Do you know of anybody like that? No, not really. Now we're getting down to like 1 in 5. Only 1 in 5 of them know a Christian who's like that. All right, next 3, and this is where we're going to end. Hey, this may surprise you. I would talk to someone about faith if they were confident in sharing their perspective. Really? Yeah, don't beat around the bush. Don't be weird about it. It's okay that you tell me what you believe, as long as you're not forcing it on me or allowing me to draw my own conclusions, if you're listening, if it's a dialogue. People are, for the most part, they're okay with that. Do you know of anybody like that? There's not much of a gap there, but still it's pretty low. Next one, hey, if they demonstrate interest in my story or my life. Faith is shared when you know someone. It's just a lot easier to share when you know them. When you develop a relationship with them. That's really, yeah, of course. But again, right? Do you know of anybody like that? Even less. No, not really. 17% knew a Christian that was like that. In this thing, we need to be the kind of people that play the long game, okay? Developing a relationship and continue to develop it. And like a genuine relationship, a genuine friendship, a genuine connection is so, so, so important when it comes to authentic and even transformative, real conversations about faith. Increasingly in our culture, any sort of impersonal, non-relational, quick-hitting means of sharing your faith, like, I'm going to put this bumper sticker on my car, or I'm going to wear this t-shirt, I'm going to give them this tract, or I'm going to blah, blah, blah. There's a reason that Jesus came to earth as a person and lived 30 plus years and spent 3 years every single day with a group of 12. There's a reason he did that. Okay, last one. We got to be good at asking questions. Just ask questions. Not as like an inquisition, right? Tell me more about that. What do you think about that? What's your marriage like? Tell me about your kids. That's an interesting perspective. Why do you think that? Just asking questions, right? So 6 things there as we're thinking about how to do this here at Christmas. We're thinking about a Christmas Eve invite, or listen, maybe even beyond that, right? Because so many of us are in relationship with people, we have to play the long game. How do we do that?
Hey, Prairie Lakes Church. As we go into our final week of Advent this week, I just want to encourage you. Who's been on your heart? Who needs that invitation to our Christmas Eve service? Maybe it's time that you invite them. Let's sing together. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine. it shine. Oh, 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 let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Thanks, Pastor Jesse. And maybe you're sitting at home and you're like me, where you were both challenged and encouraged by today's message. And one of the things that stood out to me most was Jesse's comment that it's a choice, but it's not an option to share the truth, the good news, the gospel with those in our little Iowa, to be part of the Great Commission. And we have a great opportunity this week, as we mentioned at the top of the service, to be invitational to our Christmas Eve services next weekend. So I encourage you to get after your little Iowa, to be invitational, to bring someone on your arm, whether it's virtually or in person at one of our campuses. I encourage you to do that this week. Online, we're going to have services at 3:30 and 8 o'clock p.m. on the 24th. We have a 9 a.m. rebroadcast on Christmas Day, so I encourage you to invite to one of those services. But kids, you are up next. Children's ministry is about to begin, and everyone else, we'll see you back next week. Merry Christmas.
Tell it from the mountaintop. I will go and tell it. I will go and tell it. Tell it from the mountaintop. Thank you for sending Jesus. He was born for all the world. You gave us so much love, and I'm telling all the world. I will go and tell it. I will go and tell it. Tell it from the mountaintop. I will go and tell it. I will go and tell it.
week, we're celebrating Christmas.
Oh, and we're also doing this. Hey, I'm Amaya.
And I'm Zeke,
And we're talking about Christmas.
which is celebrating Jesus, God's greatest gift.
What do you love the most about getting ready for Christmas?
Oh, everything. The lights, decorations, ooh, Christmas specials. And that's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown.
Don't forget setting up the nativity.
Nativity.
You know, all the figures from the Christmas story.
Oh, yeah. We still put up the plastic manger scene from when I was a kid. Plus, we bake all sorts of cookies. Oh, I love Christmas cookies.
Good, because we're going to do it all by building a gingerbread nativity.
Oh, do we have to bake?
Nope, but we do have to architect. Here we have all of our characters. We have Mary, we have Joseph, we have baby Jesus, and 1, 2, 3 wise men.
What about the shepherds?
The kid didn't have any shepherd.
Oh, I'm turning this guy into a shepherd.
The kid also didn't have any barns or stable or a shed. So we're gonna be using,
Graham crackers.
yeah, I mean, this is where our architectural skills really come in. Have you ever made a gingerbread house before?
Yeah, but the icing never holds right. The pieces always slide or fall down.
Not today, because today we're using sugar glue.
I'm not seeing glue.
Well, that's because we have to apply superheat until it melts like lava.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's make it. Remember, do not do this alone.
Grab an adult to help.
All right, first step, pour the sugar into a bottom-heavy saucepan. Thank you. All right, that should be enough to start. Step 2, place the sugar on a burner on medium-high heat.
Definitely grab a grown-up for this part.
Step 3, swirl the sugar and stir as it starts to melt. Thank you. Oh, here it is.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have glue.
Woo, it's actually caramelized.
Sugar, or sucrose, is a single molecule. When heat is applied, it kicks off a series of chemical reactions. These can form up to 1,000 different compounds that make up caramel. It's so complicated, scientists aren't even sure how it works yet.
Step 5, keep your sugar glue warm while you build. Yay! I think Frank Lloyd Wright will be proud.
Who? Oh, the famous architect. Although I don't think Frank Lloyd Wright worked in gingerbread and sugar glue. Tasty though. Do we get to decorate?
Yes, right now. And well, that turned out kind of, I mean, you can tell what it is, right?
Away in a manger, one cookie for a bed.
All right, it's time for
The story before the story.
Today, we're in the 3rd book of the New Testament, Luke. But before Luke, in the very beginning, out of love, God made an amazing world. But when people turned away from God, the world was broken.
God made a plan to bless the whole world through the Israelites, but over and over, God's people would run to God and then pull away, just like a yo-yo.
Then, foreign nations invaded and captured the Israelites. They must have wondered if God still loved them and if He had a plan for them. God spoke through prophets about the great rescuer God would send.
And at last, after hundreds of years, God sent an angel to tell a girl named Mary she would have a very special baby.
Which is where our story starts.
Take it away.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Brian.
Okay, the stage was set. After so many long years, God's amazing rescue plan was underway. And God actually used a foreign king to help carry out that plan. The Jewish people lived under Roman rule, and the Roman leader Caesar Augustus needed money for his fine palaces and large army.
I command a census of every single person in my entire empire.
That meant that every person had to be counted and placed on a list to pay expensive taxes to Rome. And news of this census traveled all the way from Rome to the tiny town of Nazareth in Judea, on the very edge of the Roman Empire.
Hear ye! Hear ye! Every person must go immediately to their own hometown to be listed.
A carpenter named Joseph and the girl he was engaged to marry, named Mary, heard the decree.
I guess I'll be making a road trip to Bethlehem.
I guess we'll be making a road trip to Bethlehem.
Both Joseph and Mary had been born into the family line of King David, so they would have to make the week-long journey to Bethlehem, the town of David, in order to be counted. Now, this was more than a little inconvenient, as Mary was nearly ready to have a baby whose birth had been announced by an angel.
You will become pregnant and give birth to a son. You must call him Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High God.
The trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem was about 70 miles, which is just a couple hours by car, but a whole week of travel on foot or by donkey. The journey was long and dusty. Camping out on the rough ground could not have been very comfortable for Mary. At last, Mary and Joseph saw the town of Bethlehem. They must have been ready for a hot bath and a quiet place to stay after that long journey. But the little town of Bethlehem was not so still and silent. Lots of other people had come to be counted as well. They filled every inn and guest room in town.
There has got to be room for us somewhere. Have we checked with all of your relatives?
Even my great Aunt Hulda and my third cousins twice removed.
Finally, the very last home that Mary and Joseph tried had a room. Sort of. They were offered a place to stay with the animals.
I don't know about this.
It's dry, it's warm, and this baby really, really, really needs a place to be born.
So Mary and Joseph settled into their most unusual guest room, and there with the cows, moo, and sheep, meh, and chickens, pop, Mary's brand new baby boy was born.
It's just like the angel told you. And his name?
The angel said we must call him Jesus.
Mary wrapped her baby tightly in long strips of cloth to keep him warm and cozy. There was no crib or cradle, so she placed him in a manger. The king of the entire world slept peacefully in the animal's feeding trough as Mary and Joseph looked on, and outside, the nighttime sky blazed with stars. God's very own son, the best gift ever, came into the world in the most unexpected way. And the birth announcement, well, I'm just gonna save that for later.
Most amazing birth story ever.
You know, nobody understood it then, but this tiny baby was going to grow up to teach and heal and show people what God was like. And then Jesus would choose to lay down his life and the whole world to defeat death itself.
That is some Christmas gift.
Not exactly something you just find on an Amazon wish list.
So, what's our part in the story?
Well, our world gets wrapped up in hoping for so many different things, you know? We want everything from world peace down to a shiny new skateboard, and that's great. But in the middle of it all, be sure to remember the most important gift.
Right. So find a quiet moment to thank God for the gift of Jesus and ask God to help you walk with Jesus every moment of the coming year.
Yeah, because knowing Jesus is an amazing gift that you can open every single day.
I think you've got it. So, Merry Christmas! Ho, 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 ho! See you next time.
Merry Christmas. Bye, Brian.
Bye, Brian.
So here's the thing. Jesus is the greatest gift.
I think we need some sheep at the manger. Big, fluffy ones.
Thanks for joining us in the Story Lab. Merry Christmas.